Thank you for staying with us. According to data from the National Bureau of Statistics, food inflation dropped to 26.08% in January 2025 on the back of the rebasing of the Consumer Price Index. The rebased food inflation now means that prices of food increased at a slower rate compared to the same period of 2024. The report also says that prices of food staples like beans, gari, yam, tomatoes, and certain grains are currently low and affordable for households due to the bumper harvest of the 2024-2025 planting season. Well, joining us via Zoom is the public finance analyst Olusegun Elemo. Good morning. It's good to have you join us.
Yeah, good morning. Happy to join.
Great. Now, there are those who would wonder how much of good news this is, especially when it comes to Naira and Kobo, when it comes to having food on the table of the average Nigerian, when it comes to so many issues that affect the ordinary Nigerian on the streets. How does this rebasing particularly position the consumer to be that person that will benefit at the end of the day?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, I think that the rebasing is coming on the backdrop of the statement made by the president last year during the presentation of the budget, that he would reduce inflation in 2025 to about 15%. Well, for me, I thought it was an economic statement. Well, while it's partly economic, I think it's largely political. And that was why, analysts kept saying, oh, what will change? What will the president introduce into the mix that will enable him move inflation from 34% to 15%? But little did we know that the president was well prepared for it. He had thought it through with his team and he knew exactly what he was going to do. So in January, the National Bureau of Statistics then invited us and a couple of our colleagues in the sector to consult on the intention to rebase the inflation figures. Yeah, we were there at that consultation meeting, and then we listened to the MBS. But the truth is that I don't think that data should conflict with human realities or lived experiences of people. What should happen ordinarily is that data should validate the experiences of citizens. In this case, while the system of national accounts provides for the opportunity to adjust the base year for inflation within 5 to 10 years. I think that this coming at this time appears a little bit insensitive. Well, I understand what the government is trying to do, move attention away from what is occupying the space or the minds of the people around the numbers, jacking up. And to be fair to the government, I think there's been some stability, especially on the macroeconomic front. And we actually indeed expect that from January this year, inflation will begin to slow down. Howbeit, maybe not at the rate at which the president projected, but with what has now happened with the adjustment of the base year, I think that maybe the president will then move closer to his projection, but certainly not the people.
That's right. So even with this lower CPI, that's the Consumer Price Index weight, now talking about the food inflation, which is now, core inflation rather, which is now 22.59%, it highlights the rising housing and the transport cost. So with this rebasing, does it reflect the systemic failure in terms of addressing housing or the inadvertently exposed systemic failures in sectors like housing? And what urgent reforms would you now recommend for the government to look into?
Well, you see, the state we're in right now, with what has been done, you see a situation where food which ordinarily accounts for about 57% of household consumption, has now been rebased from 51.8% to about 40.1%. That's a huge drop. I mean, that's saying that we're not agreeing to the realities. The reality is that people are spending on food, and food is expensive in the market as we speak. While there's been some drop in prices of selected commodities, I think largely people are still spending. I mean, I can attest to what I'm spending in my own household. And I know how, these prices have jacked up over the last couple of months. Also, look at electricity, for instance. You all know that, electricity is not the same it used to be about a year or two ago. Look at communication, for instance. I mean, just recently, we saw that, telecoms provider, said they were going to, and the NCC approved a 50% jack up in prices. Are we saying all those things don't reflect the realities of the people? Is that what we're saying, that we don't reckon with it? So those are issues. But I think that what the government should rather focus on, which it had continued to do before now, is to stabilize the macroeconomic fronts, especially the exchange rate. We have some stability with energy supply now in terms of, well, not electricity. So there's some stability in that regard. We are not importing as we used to, that could put pressure on the foreign exchange reserve that we have as it used to, even though we're still looking at the evidence that we have on the table. So I think the MPC will need to just stabilize further that front, which should in turn impact on inflation figures and the realities of the people. But also is that the fiscal authority will need to do more in terms of providing security that will enable bumper harvest that you just mentioned about. I mean, for me, I haven't seen any bumper harvest in that regard. So we will need to really experience that bumper harvest that will drive down the price of food prices. Food commodities in the market. Right. That will then give the people more disposable income, free up their income to attend to other pressing issues.
There are those who say that this would help make Nigeria a strategic economic player and position us on the continent such that we can compete effectively with others. Do you share the same perspective?
Well, yes, I maybe not too far from it, yes. But again, is that why we want to compete, whether regionally or globally, I think we'll also need to satisfy local consumption, people first, make sure that they're living properly. And then again, you see, like I said earlier, the government has the prerogative to change the components by which it computes inflation, whether poverty. Recall that even recently we had the rebasement of poverty figures, where we now had, unemployment rather, where we now had unemployment moving from 40% to 4%. And then, government introducing some new dynamics into the mix. Yes, government always has its position on how it wants to push things forward. But like I said, the welfare of the people is paramount, and government needs to attend to that as well. And what the reality says today is that people are spending largely all of their income on food. And that accounts for what is happening with inflation figure, especially with food inflation.
That's right.
And we need to deal with that reality.
Very quickly, if you can, in just less than a minute. Experts are predicting 2025 inflation to be between 27 to 30%, far above the president's budget of 15.75 target. So given this Nigeria's rebasing, this recent rebasing, do you think it's possible for us to achieve single digits in 2026? Or is it just a wishful thinking with this current structural reform?
Well, single digits, you're saying that inflation will slow down to 9%? I don't think so. Because if you say single digits, that's what that means. Well, the president projected that he will achieve 15% this year. Well, for me, I don't think we will get close to 15%. But I did not even imagine that we will come quickly to the numbers we're dealing with right now, because the reality is the opposite. But like I said, the macroeconomic regulators, the MPC, the CBN, would need to continue with the reforms and stabilize on those reforms to ensure that we don't have sporadic shifts again especially with the FX, because majority of our consumption are imported. If we're able to do that, there's some stability, and the fiscal authorities also do the needful in terms of providing an enabling environment to address some of these issues with regards to food supply. I think we can slow down a little bit further from where we are already.
Quickly. Now, just this last question. If you say that this measurement is not a reflection of the realities of the people, does that mean we are not measuring correctly? And how does this help us with our policy reforms? Means that we'll not be positioning our policies to suit the current realities?
Well, it doesn't mean that we're not measuring correctly. You know, I said something earlier. I said government has the prerogative, and the system of national accounts allows for change in the mix of inflation computation. So you can decide that, oh, this is what we were used to in terms of computing inflation, and we've done that for the last 10 years, 5 to 10 years. We're changing the mix. Government has the prerogative to do that, but does it reflect the reality of the people? And like I said, what got us to this point, there are a number of factors that got us to where we are. So the inflation has been moving upward consistently over time, which had also been in tandem with the realities of the people. How much are people spending on food, on energy, on communication, and all of that? And that is how the inflation numbers have moved. When you now drag it down, because the inflation did not drop on its own, it's not an organic drop. You drag it down by introducing new things in the mix and changing the numbers of existing computation components. When you do that, it contradicts the reality of the people. What the government needs to now do is to make sure that the reality of the people now conform with the data that is producing. Currently, that's not the case. You will need to ensure that people have more disposable income to attend to other pressing issues, and they're able to spend less on key items such as food, energy, and consumption. If you're able to achieve that, then your data becomes the reality of the people.
All right, we'll have to leave the conversation here now. Olusegun Elemo, public finance analyst, thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me.